Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's lecture, which will be short because our readings for this week are not very long, but yet still, I think, will create an opportunity for interesting discussions on the role of motherhood and feminist activism. So the first article by Guzman talks about her own experience in creating what she calls decolonial mothering. And she talks about these various practices between mothers and daughters. One is sharing stories or cuentos, which are stories that are usually told to teach a moral lesson. Advice and consejos, which are a unidirectional form of nurturing advice and moral lessons designed to influence behaviors. And also having pláticas or conversations, which are bidirectional conversations that involve the sharing of personal thoughts and experiences as a means of healing the mind, body, and soul. And so some of you may, as you're reading this, think about how you perhaps participated in these kinds of interactions with your own mothers or your own daughters, and what kinds of lessons are being shared through these practices. She's also looking at this in the context of the banning of Mexican American studies in Arizona. And as we are seeing now throughout some parts of the country where teaching things like African American studies or ethnic studies are being banned or restricted. So in this kind of context, the home serves as an extension of the classroom. And she's talking about these practices as a way to create what she calls a guerrera spirit in her daughters, which defines a sense of positive self-agency in Latinas. This kind of spirit allows girls to reimagine their experiences as a site of resistance and create suspended spaces through mother-daughter dialogues where the social hierarchies that constrain them are suspended. So they're able to create these kind of interstitial spaces or alternative spaces with their dialogues where they can have and think about and reflect on what processes to address the racist kinds of experiences that her daughters, for example, are experiencing in school. So by engaging in these kinds of conversations with her daughters, she sees the role that motherhood has in feminism and sees mothering as a feminist practice. The other article looks at a group of women called the Mothers of East Los Angeles in California in the 80s and 90s who organized in East Los Angeles against construction of a prison in their neighborhood. And she is studying this group to look at how these women who just see themselves as traditional mothers, family women, sort of use that role and their responsibility to take care of their children and their children's education as a way to get involved in their community and to see their traditional roles as mothers as a political role as well. And so they began their activism through participation in their children's school through the PTA programs and being involved with their children's school. And this allowed them to create a network with other mothers in their neighborhood so that when the issue of constructing a prison in their neighborhood arose and other environmental issues started arising in their neighborhood, they already had created a network that they could call upon to then organize and speak up against these projects. They also talk about expanding the meaning of mothers to include non-biological mothers. So they're also expanding who gets to belong to the group called mother and talk about how if you care about children, if you care about the experiences of children in your neighborhood, then you are also basically taking on a mothering role as well. The article also discusses how they practice strategic solidarity with other wealthier neighborhoods to stop an oil pipeline through their neighborhood. So they're expanding beyond their neighborhood to also connect with other surrounding neighborhoods to address various environmental racism issues that are affecting their community. And through participation in the various public hearings that take place on these projects, they're able to develop their own voices by participating in in these public hearings. So on the face of it, you might look at this group and think, oh, they're just a bunch of moms, who are concerned and might not be perceived as politically active or wouldn't be thought about as feminists. But when they are, in some respects, taking their mothering role outside of the home and using that role to affect political change, to be activists, to have an impact on what is and is not brought into their neighborhoods that might be harmful to themselves and their children, then we need to think about mothering and their activism in a much broader, more political way, perhaps even as a feminist activism. So this ends the lecture for this week. As I said, it would be short, but I look forward to your discussions and your thoughts on these two readings and the discussion posts. Have a wonderful week.